Hello, everyone, and welcome to the July 5th production diary for the 7th Valkyrie. I have a ton of good news today. So chapter 27, which is kind of the last setup chapter at the end of Act 2 for this season, is done, and I've spent it was 8 hours when I wrote these notes first. It's probably been closer to 15 now. Just thinking and noodling and getting my mind churning about the climax of the story. And I'm really excited about that. Through the nature of my writing process, one thing I've realized, at least in the past 3 volumes, it may not stay the same moving forward, but I like to introduce pieces at first, set up the story, kind of let things move a little bit, let them kind of meander. And I hate to use the word meander, but I actually do like to capture kind of that normal pace of life in the early chapters, and then it's like, all right, then things start to pick up, coming into, all of a sudden things are changing, things are adapting, things are, we've got rising action. I think that's one of those fancy terms we learned in English lit class. And then all of a sudden we get to this big moment around the climax where everything kind of like changes and resolves. And there's usually a big moment or several moments like this that kind of happen to make that resolution from, okay, things have been building. We have action, and then maybe one climactic action, and then, okay, now this has happened. What is going to happen to like resolve this and get us to the next volume? And for me, that part of the process is always the hardest. Well, I wouldn't call it the hardest, because it's not something I actually think about consciously. But it is what I'll call the most brain intensive, and I'll explain that this way. I remember when I was younger, there was this video game called Thrillville, where you could build roller coasters, and you could build all the ups and downs and all the pieces, and I want to hit this part and that part and this thing. But then once you finally got all the stuff that you really wanted, like you had to hit your top speed and get a certain number of loop-de-loops, and go upside down this many times and put this like track element in. Once all of that happened, the key was you had to get back all the way to like the starting line so that it could actually be a roller coaster as opposed to just like a highway to hell. And they had a helper function for that called like finish track for me. And I've always thought of that as kind of a good metaphor for how the climax comes together in my brain, which is a phrasing. But so basically what would happen is you get it close enough. You'd be like, okay, here are all the pieces I have. Here's what I want to do. Let's finish this off. Like I've got the pieces that I want to have in place. How can I fit this all together? And then you'd hit the like finish track for me button, and all of a sudden you could hear the PlayStation whirring, and it'd go like, because what it was doing is you'd see it on screen. You'd see like these like ghostly tracks permutating and then coming back and then going, and so it would test all these hundreds of different options all at once, and it was cool because it would visualize it on screen as it's going, and then if it selected one that it liked, it would go bing, and then the track turns green. So that's kind of what happens with my brain, where I'll get all these pieces together and I'll have some intention of kind of like a confrontation or some stuff that needs to happen at this big sort of finale moment. But how it actually comes together once I've like gotten all my summaries down and like kind of gotten everything in place, it usually takes looking at like 5 chapter outlines and having a running draft of the chapter out even before the other chapters have been edited, and just like writing over and over and over again what this is going to be, and whether that's the setup or what needed to happen before that, or like what the situation is, what time of day, what time of night. All that stuff starts being, becomes optional, and all of a sudden it's like you just start iterating and you go, okay, what about this? Okay, well, I hate that part of it, but I do like the fact that like, the Machine King's here. Okay, cool. So we like when the Machine King here, and you basically, it's like mushing all these possibilities together, and you just start pulling the elements that are like successful and that really resonate. And there's no way to describe how that is. It's just some of them feel right and some of them don't feel as right. And the ones that feel totally right, I kind of start, draw, or like I'll bold, and then I start figuring out a way to put those together, and it becomes this like jumbled mess of fragments with like half things here, half things there, stuff that was supposed to connect to each other down there and there, and then finally it starts to smooth out. It's like, and it just becomes emergent over this 8 to 10 to 12 hour process where I'm just sitting here distracted at CrossFit, or I'm, I'm sitting on the sideline of the soccer game going, but should she be on the left or the right? And what do we think about, like, is there a night advantage to X's, or would the Edrins have a night advantage? How does that work? Well, and let's think about the emotional impact of how a knife versus an explosion, stuff like that. This is just all random fragments of stuff that need to be thought about, and each one, like, you pull one and it changes all the rest of them. So that's, so my brain just starts whirring and whirring and whirring, and then eventually it's like, after just this long period of time, it's done. And like, some things are put on the back burner, other things are moved around, because I just, like, once my brain starts spinning on this, it's like when you put a computer to render something, like, you just have to let it render. And yeah, so that's that. But I've always thought it'd be cool to have, like, rather than a track simulator, I'd love to have, like, somewhat, maybe one day if we ever get an adaptation, like an anime or something. I'm a huge anime fan, if that wasn't apparent. It's like, I'd love for there to be, like, a really cool process of, like, showing that, of, like, okay, let's start with, like, what the climax is, but, like, take just one of my Google Doc pages and see all the revisions that have gotten done, and try and capture that down on screen, like, that crazy thought process. Because I've always thought that'd be a really interesting behind the scenes element of, like, how a story comes together. But we'll probably have to wait a good while before we've got the team and the clout to pull that off. But hey, we're on the journey. So before I head off, a few things I wanted to say. I'm pretty sure I sent out some sort of announcement about 7/7. I may have gotten a little bit carried away by 7/7 and sevens because it's the 7th Valkyrie, and I love July. And as a date, nothing major will be changing on July 7th. So hold off. I will have some further announcements about the app, about season 2, the Shattered Visage, which is the official name, if that wasn't clear from now on. But yeah, so all very exciting. Hold off, but the app is coming. Chapters are done. We're closing in on the climax of season 2. I'm putting my team in place for production to really ramp things up. And 3 chapters are getting ready to be put down. And I mean, I think with that in line, there would only be like 3 or 4 more. So very, very cool. Very, very progress. Weird way to say that. But yeah. Thank you guys for supporting me throughout this entire thing. Great progress, great movement. I'm now working every single day on 7th Valkyrie, which I wasn't doing before because I was, there were just a lot of other things in the way. But I've cleared out my schedule, and I'm working absolutely every single day on this. So you guys are going to be getting a lot more production updates, a lot more progress. And I'm very excited to see what comes of all of this in the next coming weeks. So thank you guys for listening. It was a little bit longer production diary than usual, but I hope it was not too draggy. I appreciate all the support, and I will keep you guys in the loop. So, long story short, lots of cool progress and lots more to come.